Some people don't just show their true colors. They accidentally reveal their entire blueprint. That's exactly what happens when a chosen one walks into a room. You don't go looking for evil plans, schemes, or hidden agendas. Yet somehow, your very existence pulls the mask off people who thought they were playing chess while you were playing checkers. Spoiler alert, you weren't even playing. What makes this moment even wilder is that psychologists have found people with manipulative tendencies often overestimate their intelligence and underestimate everyone else. In simple terms, the same folks plotting behind your back usually believe they're secret masterminds. Meanwhile, you saw through them faster than a cracked window in Harmattan season. But here's where it gets deliciously ironic. They built their entire plan on the assumption that you would stay predictable, distracted, or emotionally blind. They thought they had your reactions mapped out like a cheap GPS. And then, without warning, you blew their whole universe to pieces just by choosing clarity over confusion, peace over chaos, and self-worth over manipulation. Their demonic master plan wasn't destroyed by some dramatic confrontation or a Hollywood-style showdown. Nope, it fell apart because you stopped fitting into the script they wrote for you in their head. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than the moment their puppet cuts the strings and starts walking like they own the stage. And let's be honest, if their plan had even one more flaw, it would have been legally classified as a comedy. They were out here scheming with the confidence of someone who's never succeeded at anything except lying to themselves. Now here you are, grounded, awakened, sharper than ever, while they're somewhere in shock, trying to rebuild an empire that collapsed because you dared to choose yourself. This is where the real story begins. Number one, you didn't ruin their plan. You revealed how small their plan actually was. People love to act like you came into their life and shattered some grand design they were building in secret. But the truth is far less dramatic and far more honest. Their entire plan only looked big because they viewed it through the lens of their own insecurity. They weren't building anything powerful or strategic. They were building something fragile, shaky, and dependent on you staying unaware. The moment you gained clarity, the whole thing crumbled because it never had real structure to begin with. What makes this point so significant is that people with hidden agendas often build their sense of power on the assumption that the people around them aren't thinking deeply. They rely on shortcuts, emotional manipulation, and half-truths. They think they're playing in the major leagues when all they're doing is rearranging the furniture in a room they don't even own. So when you stepped in with genuine insight, grounded intuition, and a level of self-respect they weren't expecting, you didn't just interrupt their plan. You exposed how unrealistic it really was. Your presence had a way of highlighting the flaws they hoped no one would ever notice. They were counting on you to be confused, overwhelmed, or blindly trusting. They miscalculated your strength, your intelligence, and your ability to connect dots faster than they could hide them. That's why they're shocked. That's why they feel derailed. Because their plan depended entirely on you being smaller than you actually are. You didn't attack their scheme, you grew out of it. You didn't confront them. You outgrew the version of yourself they needed to control. And the moment you stepped into a clearer, healthier, more self-aware space, their so-called master plan shrank into something laughable, something too flimsy to even stand on its own. Their panic isn't because you destroyed something powerful. Their panic is because they finally saw the truth. Their plan only worked as long as you stayed in the dark. Once you switched on your inner light, everything they built was exposed for what it really was. Small, fragile, and never worthy of your worry in the first place. Number two, your presence forced them to confront the parts of themselves they always avoided. When you showed up fully aware and grounded, you didn't just disrupt their plans. You held up a mirror to the parts of themselves they spent years hiding from. even from themselves. People who rely on manipulation and secret schemes are masters at pretending everything is fine on the surface, while chaos brews underneath. They build walls of charm, lies, or fake confidence to cover the cracks they refuse to face. And then you arrive, unshakable, clear, and untouchable by their usual tactics, and suddenly those cracks become impossible to ignore. Your energy, your clarity, and your refusal to be coerced or distracted created a pressure they weren't prepared for. They were forced to face the uncomfortable truths about their own insecurities, fears, and moral compromises. Every move they made, every calculated step, now reflected their own weakness rather than some external victory. Their entire plan depended on you staying predictable, but you didn't play along. Your awareness became the spotlight on their shadow side, the side they worked tirelessly to keep hidden from the world. And here's the kicker: they hate themselves for it. Deep down, they know they've been avoiding responsibility, evading growth, and manipulating situations to feel a sense of control. You didn't lecture them or attack them. You simply existed as someone who sees clearly, someone who cannot be played like a chess piece. That simple truth terrifies them because it forces introspection, the kind that is raw, uncomfortable, and unavoidable. By being yourself, by refusing to bend or dim your presence, you became the catalyst for a confrontation they never invited, but desperately needed. Your clarity made them see their own moral bankruptcy, their own empty strategies, and their own fragile ego. Their plan fell apart not because of drama or confrontation, but because your existence made their self-deception impossible to maintain. In essence, you didn't just derail their scheme. You forced them into a reckoning with themselves, a reckoning they could neither control nor escape. Your presence became their truth, and nothing is more threatening to someone built entirely on illusion than the undeniable light of reality. Number 3, they were counting on your confusion. You shocked them with clarity. People who build secret plans or schemes thrive on one simple thing: your uncertainty. They depend on you doubting yourself, hesitating, overthinking, or second-guessing your every move. Their whole strategy is designed to keep you off balance, to make you question your instincts, your worth, and your choices. They imagine you as a storm they can navigate, a mind they can twist, a heart they can manipulate. And then you show up with clarity, calm, grounded, and unshakable, and suddenly their calculations are worthless. Your clarity is like a mirror they weren't prepared for. Every lie they spun, every manipulation they relied on becomes meaningless the moment you understand what's happening. They expect confusion because that's what they would do in your place. They assume everyone processes the world through fear and doubt, but you don't. You see through the smoke and mirrors, and that blinds them completely. The shock in their reaction isn't just because you disrupted their plan, it's because you became the opposite of what they assumed you'd be. This isn't about being dramatic or flashy. It's about the quiet power of someone who refuses to be swayed by someone else's agenda. Your clarity forces them to confront the fact that their power over you was never real. They relied on your hesitation, your emotional reaction, and your lack of confidence to fuel their scheme. The moment you stripped all of that away, their plan lost its engine. What's extraordinary here is that your clarity doesn't just stop their plan, it exposes their weakness. They see how much they overestimated themselves and underestimated you. Every calculated move, every manipulative tactic now appears desperate and childish. Their confidence crumbles because it was never built to withstand someone who moves with purpose, self-respect, and a sharp awareness of reality. You didn't just derail their strategy. You rewrote the rules of engagement by showing that clarity is stronger than cunning, observation stronger than deception, and self-awareness stronger than manipulation. In that moment, you became untouchable in the most silent, powerful, and undeniable way. Number 4, you broke their control because you didn't respond the way their narrative required. People who build secret plans or manipulative schemes rely on predictability. They design their moves around the reactions they expect from you: fear, guilt, anger, or panic. Every text, every word, every situation is calculated to trigger the exact emotional response that keeps their plan moving forward. They are so confident in this because it has worked before, with others who lacked your awareness or strength. And then you appear and don't respond the way they thought you would. You don't panic. You don't apologize unnecessarily. You don't fall into the emotional trap they set. The effect is immediate. Their control collapses because it was never about you. It was about how much they could manipulate your reactions. By refusing to fit the role they cast you in, you expose the fragility of their entire strategy. Their sense of power was built on the assumption that you would play the part they needed, the confused, the overthinking, the reactive one. When you refuse to perform, the entire narrative collapses. They suddenly realize that their confidence was misplaced, that the strings they thought they held were invisible and fragile, and that their supposed master plan has no backbone without your cooperation. What's fascinating is how silent this victory is. You didn't have to confront them, argue, or prove anything. Your calm, deliberate, and clear response, or lack of the response they demanded, does all the work for you. You dismantle their influence simply by existing outside of their expectations. And here's the truth they can't admit. Their control was never real. It was a shadow, a projection, a fantasy that depended entirely on your predictable reactions. The moment you break free from that script, the illusion vanishes. You didn't just derail their plan, you made them question every assumption, every tactic, and every bit of confidence they thought they had. In the end, your refusal to respond the way they wanted doesn't just protect you, it reveals them for what they are. Ordinary humans trying to play a game that only works when someone else plays the wrong part. And you? You refused, and that changed everything. Number 5. You exposed how fragile their power was just by walking away. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can do to someone plotting against you isn't confrontation, shouting, or proving a point. It's simply removing yourself from their reach. People who rely on manipulation, control, or hidden schemes build their sense of power on the presence and reactions of others. Their confidence is like a house of cards. It only stands as long as you're within their orbit, reacting, worrying, or feeding their narrative. The moment you step out of that orbit, the cards collapse, and suddenly their empire of control looks tiny, flimsy, and utterly unsustainable. Walking away isn't passive. It's a declaration. It's a quiet, undeniable force that says, I am not here to play by your rules, and your world does not define me. When you disengage, you strip them of the most critical element of their plan, your energy. They counted on you being accessible, emotionally entangled, or otherwise available for manipulation. Without that, their confidence crumbles, because their power was never rooted in skill, intelligence, or foresight. It was rooted in access. And now that access is gone. The shock they experience is intense. They may scramble, try to call you back, guilt you, or act out in desperation. But every action only reveals how empty their control was to begin with. Their strategies relied on your involvement, and your absence exposes just how dependent they were on playing a role in someone else's life. Their power was never a reflection of strength. It was a reflection of your tolerance, your attention, and your availability. Walking away is not just a physical act, it's a spiritual and psychological shift. You're no longer participating in their story, no longer giving them fuel, and no longer validating their illusions. And the best part is that they can't fix it by force or clever tactics. They can only watch as the truth becomes undeniable. Their so-called influence was fragile, temporary, and completely powerless without you. In that silence, in that absence, you reveal the ultimate truth. The real power was never theirs, and you never needed to fight for it. Your presence, or lack thereof, was enough to dismantle everything they built on illusions. Number 6. They never expected you to heal faster than they expected. One of the most underestimated weapons in your arsenal is your ability to heal, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, faster than anyone else anticipates. People plotting against you often rely on the assumption that your wounds, your pain, or your vulnerabilities will keep you trapped long enough for their plan to succeed. They bank on the idea that you will carry their lies, manipulations, and betrayals like heavy chains, weighed down and slow to recover. But when you heal faster than they expected, you don't just defy their timetable, you completely upend it. Healing at your own pace is a silent rebellion. It's the quiet way you reclaim power without having to confront, argue, or justify yourself. They think they have all the time in the world to watch you struggle, to watch you remain stuck, to use your recovery as a playground for manipulation. And then, unexpectedly, you emerge sharper, clearer, and stronger than before. The very wounds they thought would define or weaken you instead become the fuel for your growth. What they never account for is resilience. Their plan depends on your stagnation, on the notion that emotional or psychological pain will keep you predictable and reactive. Your rapid recovery exposes the fragility of their assumptions. Suddenly, the pressure they applied, the chaos they created, and the manipulations they engineered no longer have the intended effect. Their timeline collapses because you refuse to play by it. This kind of healing isn't flashy or dramatic. It's quiet, steady, and unstoppable. It's the kind of growth that doesn't need recognition to be powerful. Every step forward, every boundary you reinforce, every insight you gain chips away at their so-called control. You don't just recover, you evolve. And that is exactly what terrifies them. They realize that while they were busy plotting, you were growing beyond the reach of their influence. Your healing becomes the ultimate undoing of their strategy, proving that their plans only worked as long as you allowed them to dictate your pace, your pain, and your power. Number 7, they never expected you to read their intentions without them confessing. There's a level of threat in awareness that most manipulators never account for. They operate under the assumption that their intentions can stay hidden until they choose to reveal them, or that you will remain blind to the web they've spun until it's too late. Their entire plan is built on secrecy, half-truths, and the hope that no one is paying close attention. And then you appear sharp, intuitive, and unshakably present. And suddenly all their moves are obvious before a word is even spoken. You see through the disguise, the charm, the smoke and mirrors, and that's when the real unraveling begins. Reading intentions without confession is not about paranoia, it's about clarity and observation. You notice the patterns, the inconsistencies, the energy behind their words, and the subtle ways they manipulate the environment to favor themselves. You recognize the difference between what they want you to see and what they're actually planning. And when you operate from that clarity, you are no longer a participant in their game. You are a force outside it, rendering every hidden tactic powerless. This is where panic sets in for them. They counted on stealth, surprise, and the advantage of your ignorance. Every manipulative action they executed was meant to work because you were supposed to miss it until the right moment. But when you anticipate, see through, and adapt in real time, their confidence crumbles. What they thought was invisible becomes glaringly obvious, and their plan begins to collapse under its own weight. The beauty of this kind of awareness is that it's silent but devastating. You don't need confrontation or dramatic exposure. Your presence alone, your ability to perceive without being told, undermines everything they built. They realize too late that the person they thought they could control or deceive has been several steps ahead all along. In the end, you didn't just derail their plan, you rendered it obsolete. Their secrets lost their power because you refused to remain in the dark. And that is a level of disruption they never saw coming, the kind that shakes their confidence, their ego, and the very foundation of their scheme. Number 8, you forced them to face the emptiness behind their hostility. There's a harsh truth most people plotting or scheming try desperately to hide. Their aggression, manipulation, and hostility is never about you. It's about the void inside them. They act with anger, control, and scheming energy because they are running from the emptiness they refuse to acknowledge. They build elaborate plans, try to manipulate and lash out, all to cover the hollowness they feel within. And then you show up, not with a fight, not with drama, but with presence, clarity, and an unshakable calm that refuses to feed their illusions. Suddenly, they are confronted with something they can't hide from, the reflection of their own emptiness. Your awareness forces them into a reckoning. Every attack, every manipulation, every attempt to control you now exposes their lack of substance rather than showcasing their power. They realize that the hostility they wielded so confidently was only a smokescreen, a desperate attempt to feel significant or in control. And because you do not react the way they expect, because you refuse to participate in the chaos they're trying to create, that emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. It is staring them in the face, raw and undeniable. What makes this even more devastating for them is that your clarity doesn't attack them. It simply illuminates the truth. You don't have to prove anything or call them out. Your presence alone shows them how hollow their plan was. The rage, the schemes, the frantic plotting, all of it collapses under the weight of your calm perception. They are left with a profound, unsettling recognition. Their strategies were never effective because they were born from insecurity and inner void, not real power. By refusing to engage in their projected chaos, you don't just derail their plan, you highlight the emptiness they've spent years trying to mask. Your strength exposes the fragility behind their hostility, leaving them with the stark reality that their entire approach was built on nothing but shadows. And that truth, silent yet undeniable, is far more shattering than any confrontation could ever be. Number 9, you didn't derail their plan. You revealed it was built entirely on you doubting yourself. Most schemes, manipulations, and hidden agendas thrive on one thing above all: your uncertainty. They aren't strong because they are clever. They're strong because they assume you will weaken yourself, question your instincts, and stay trapped in a web of self-doubt. Every calculated move they make relies on you hesitating, overthinking, or allowing their words and actions to destabilize you. The moment you step into self-assurance and clarity, everything they built collapses, not because you fought it, but because their entire structure depended on your lack of confidence. When you realize this, it changes the game entirely. Their plan wasn't a grand strategy. It was a fragile construct resting on the assumption that you would undermine yourself. They believed your reactions, your emotions, and your decisions would bend to their narrative. They thought you would overanalyze, overfeel, and overcomplicate, leaving space for them to maneuver. But you refused to play that part. You didn't argue, you didn't panic, you didn't fall into the predictable patterns they were counting on. In doing so, you revealed the truth. Their power existed only in the moments when you doubted yourself, not when you trusted your own mind. What's so quietly devastating for them is that you didn't even need to expose them aggressively. You didn't need drama, confrontation, or vindication. Simply by being clear, composed, and aware, you dismantled every intention they had. Their manipulations looked desperate in the light of your self-possession because they were never strong in themselves. They were strong only as long as you were unsure. This revelation is brutal for them because it forces a reckoning they weren't prepared for. They are left staring at the truth. Their entire plan was never about defeating you. It was about your participation in your own defeat. And you didn't give them that. You didn't fuel their agenda. You didn't play the role they assigned to you. By trusting your own clarity, your own instincts, and your own worth, you didn't just stop their plan. You made it impossible, undeniable, and completely irrelevant. Number 10, your self-respect disrupted their access to your energy. One of the most underestimated ways people lose control over others is through emotional dependence. Those who plot, manipulate, or scheme against you are counting on your energy, the attention you give, the worry you carry, the emotional space you occupy in their favor. They thrive when you respond to their games, when you feed their narrative with your confusion, guilt, or anger. Their plans are carefully designed around your participation, and the moment you reclaim your energy, their influence vanishes. Your self-respect is not just a boundary, it is a shield that blocks the fuel they depend on to function. When you honor yourself, you stop feeding the mechanisms that were meant to control you. Every attempt they make to pull you into their chaos falls flat because you have become untouchable by their expectations. They expect you to bend, to react, to apologize for things you didn't do, or to take responsibility for what isn't yours. But your refusal dismantles the foundation of their strategy. Their control relies entirely on access to your mind, your time, your emotions, and once you deny them that, their entire operation begins to collapse quietly but irrevocably. What's fascinating is that this disruption doesn't require confrontation. You don't need to argue or call them out. Simply protecting your energy, staying grounded in your self-worth, and refusing to participate in their manipulations is enough to unravel their plans. Every demand they make, every tactic they deploy, becomes meaningless because it cannot penetrate the boundaries you've set. The real devastation for them is internal. They suddenly see that their influence was never a reflection of power, skill, or strategy. It was a reflection of how much they could drain from someone else, and now, stripped of that access, they are left scrambling in a void of their own creation. Your self-respect doesn't just protect you, it exposes the fragility of their power, leaving them powerless without you. By honoring yourself, you turn the tables silently but completely, making their manipulations irrelevant, their plans impossible, and their control a thing of the past. Number 11, you shattered their plan because you stopped negotiating with disrespect. Manipulators, schemers, and people with hidden agendas rely on one predictable pattern. They push boundaries, disrespect your time, your emotions, and your values, and they expect you to negotiate, justify, or compromise to keep the peace. Their entire plan hinges on your willingness to tolerate what they shouldn't get away with. The moment you refuse to negotiate with disrespect, you pull the rug out from under them. You make it impossible for their strategy to function because it was never built to handle someone who holds firm, values themselves, and refuses to participate in their game. By standing your ground, you create an unmovable barrier. Their tactics are designed for someone pliable, someone who will apologize when they shouldn't, rationalize behavior that's unacceptable, or question their own worth in order to preserve a false sense of harmony. When you refuse all of that, their plan stops in its tracks. You didn't need to confront them aggressively or respond with anger. Simply honoring yourself, refusing to compromise your values, and keeping your standards intact is enough to dismantle the control they believed they had. What they don't realize is that disrespect is the engine that fuels their manipulations. Every slight, every attempt to twist the narrative, every subtle jab only works when you allow it to. By saying no, by not tolerating the unacceptable, you shut off the fuel. Their confidence begins to crumble because they realize the leverage they thought they had is gone. Every strategy, every scheme, every carefully calculated move becomes irrelevant in the face of someone unwilling to be bent, coerced, or diminished. The quiet power in this is almost terrifying to witness. You don't have to yell, expose, or escalate. Your refusal to negotiate with disrespect speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. It forces them to confront the reality that their plan was never about cleverness or superiority. It was about exploiting compliance. By refusing to comply, you don't just derail their scheme, you make it impossible for them to regain any control, leaving their manipulative efforts empty, ineffective, and ultimately meaningless. Number 12. You didn't fight them. You made them fight themselves. The most powerful way to dismantle someone's manipulative plan isn't by direct confrontation. It's by refusing to participate in the conflict they created. People who scheme, manipulate, or plot rely on reactions. They expect anger, panic, guilt, or confusion, and they design their moves to provoke those exact responses. But when you remain composed, clear, and unshakable, you remove yourself from the battlefield entirely, leaving them to wrestle with their own insecurities, contradictions, and lies. Suddenly, the fight they expected to have with you becomes an internal struggle they weren't prepared for. By staying calm and grounded, you force them into a mirror they can't escape. Every plot, every manipulative tactic, every hidden agenda they thought would control you now bounces back on them. They begin to see their own flaws, their own weaknesses, and the emptiness of their strategies. Their frustration, confusion, and panic are no longer about you. They're about themselves. You didn't give them ammunition. You simply refused to hand over your energy, and in doing so, their plan collapses under its own weight. What makes this so devastating is that they can't blame you. You haven't attacked them, argued, or exposed them aggressively. You've simply operated outside their expectations, outside their control, and outside their influence. Their own mind becomes the battlefield, and they realize too late that their confidence, cunning, and schemes were only effective when you were participating in the story they wrote. This approach is silent but absolute. It's not about winning a fight. It's about removing the possibility of losing to someone who thrives on your engagement. Your clarity, self-possession, and refusal to react turn their strategy into chaos, leaving them spinning in circles, trying to regain control over a situation they never truly understood. In essence, you didn't just derail their plan, you forced them to confront themselves, face their limitations, and recognize the hollowness of their power. And that is far more effective, far more powerful, and far more permanent than any argument or retaliation ever could be. Number 13, you weren't supposed to evolve. You were supposed to stay predictable. Every manipulator, schemer, or secret planner counts on predictability. They craft their moves assuming you will stay the same person you were yesterday, reacting in familiar ways, making the same mistakes, and staying trapped within the limitations they projected onto you. Their confidence depends on you remaining predictable, on them knowing exactly how to influence you, control you, or provoke the reaction they need. And then, unexpectedly, you evolve. You grow, you shift, and you refuse to be the version of yourself that fits neatly into their manipulative story. The shock this causes is enormous because evolution is something they never factored into their plans. Your growth isn't flashy or loud, but it is undeniable. Every boundary you set, every insight you gain, every moment you step into clarity disrupts their expectations. Their carefully laid plans crumble because they were built on the assumption that you would remain the person who could be easily influenced or controlled. Once you step into a new level of awareness, their strategy becomes irrelevant. The tools, tactics, and schemes they relied on lose all power because they are no longer dealing with the person they thought you were. They are dealing with someone far stronger, far wiser, and far less manipulable. What makes this so devastating to them is the silent, unstoppable nature of your evolution. You didn't need to confront them directly, expose their agenda, or fight back aggressively. You simply moved beyond the version of yourself they could predict. Your transformation highlights the fragility of their control and shows that their plan was never about skill, strength, or cleverness. It was about exploiting limitations that no longer exist. In evolving, you not only protect yourself, you dismantle their strategy effortlessly. They are forced to realize too late that the rules they thought governed the game no longer apply. You were never supposed to evolve, and that is exactly why your growth hits harder than any confrontation ever could. By changing, by refusing to stay confined to their expectations, you become the ultimate disruptor of their plan, proving that true power always comes from self-mastery, not manipulation. Number 14, you triggered their downfall because you stopped playing the role they cast you in. Every manipulator, schemer, or hidden planner relies on the story they write about you in their head. They assign roles, create expectations, and craft scenarios where you are predictable, malleable, and easy to influence. They count on you being the scared, doubtful, reactive, or desperate version of yourself, the version that fits neatly into the world they've imagined. And then you stop playing that role. You refuse to act according to the script they've written, and the result is catastrophic for them. Their plan, which looked so flawless on paper, collapses instantly because the foundation it relied on, your predictable participation, is gone. This is the quiet, almost invisible power of refusing to perform. You don't need confrontation, exposure, or retaliation. Simply by existing outside the role they assigned, you unravel their entire operation. Their calculations, manipulations, and strategies were only effective because they assumed you would act in ways that benefited their agenda. When you no longer fit that mold, their carefully constructed plan is exposed for what it truly is: fragile, dependent, and utterly meaningless without your cooperation. What makes this so devastating is how powerless it leaves them. They scramble, panic, or lash out, but nothing works because their tactics only function when you participate. Every attempt to manipulate, every subtle coercion, every hidden strategy fails because it can't account for the reality that you are now the author of your own story. Your refusal to play their part forces them to confront the truth. Their power was never real, their plan was never secure, and their confidence was never earned. It was borrowed from the version of you they expected to exist. By stepping outside their narrative, you don't just derail the plan, you redefine the rules entirely. You become untouchable not through force, not through confrontation, but through clarity, self-respect, and awareness. The role they wanted you to play no longer exists, and in that void, their schemes collapse. In stopping the performance they designed for you, you expose the emptiness behind their plans and trigger a downfall that no manipulation, no tactic, and no deception could have prevented. Conclusion: when you step into your truth, your clarity, and your self-worth, you don't just disrupt plans, you expose the illusions that others relied on to control, manipulate, or diminish you. Every manipulator, schemer, or hidden agenda is built on assumptions that you will doubt yourself, react predictably, tolerate disrespect, or remain unaware of the energy they are trying to siphon from you. But when you refuse to play the role they cast you in, when you reclaim your energy, heal faster than expected, and operate from unwavering self-respect, their entire world begins to unravel. You don't have to fight, argue, or prove yourself. The quiet power of simply existing beyond their expectations, reading intentions without confession, and refusing to participate in their chaos is enough to dismantle everything they thought they had built. Their plans collapse, not because of confrontation, but because they were never strong. They were built on your uncertainty, your emotional access, and your compliance. Your evolution, your boundaries, and your awareness reveal the fragility behind every scheme, leaving them powerless and exposed. This isn't just about defeating someone else's plan. It's about reclaiming your life, your energy, and your sovereignty. It's about understanding that your presence, your clarity, and your refusal to compromise your worth are more powerful than any manipulation, strategy, or hidden agenda. When you stop being predictable, stop tolerating disrespect, and stop letting others define your role, you become untouchable in the most profound way. So embrace your power, trust your instincts, and honor yourself above all else. The world may try to push narratives, test your patience, or challenge your boundaries, but the ultimate victory lies in knowing your value and standing firm in it. If this message resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that awaken your inner strength. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this video with anyone who needs to see it. You never know whose clarity might just derail the plans built against them. Stay blessed always.